What's up, y'all, and welcome back to your Hair Made Simple, the podcast. I'm your host, Shannon, and this is the show where we encourage you to embrace your natural hair with clarity, confidence, and courage. And I'm so excited to be chatting with Dr. Cassandre Dunbar today on a special episode that is near and dear to my heart as we're talking about how stress and the stressors of our mental and physical bodies can impact our hair and our natural hair journeys. And so Dr. Cassandre Dunbar, I met her at Empowered Podcasting Conference. She is the creator and the host of the award-winning wellness podcast called Be Well Sis, which you should absolutely check out. I enjoy it myself, and really just started on this wellness journey. She's the mother of two spirited boys and, just trying to do it all. And after burnout, having her now 5-year-old son, wanting to have this passion and learn more in the wellness space. And so glad to have her on, also with the background in biology, just to talk about all of the different things with wellness and with our journeys and with our hair. So Cassandre, I will let you say hi and then kick off with our very first question. What is your hair story?
Ooh, so thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. It was so nice meeting you at the Empowered Podcasting Conference. So I love the topic of your podcast, and I love this first question. So my hair journey I think it's nothing new, especially as a Black girl growing up in like the late 80s, 90s. I didn't have a great relationship with my hair because I had a lot of it, but it was very tight, coily, we'll call it nappy hair. Whereas in my family, like my cousins had like looser hair and it was a little bit more manageable for like the adults to take care of. So I always had like a strained relationship with my hair. So fast forward to when I was like, I think like my earliest memories of my hair were around like 6 or 7. I hated getting my hair done. I hated wash days just because my people were not gentle. Like it was brushing my forehead and just raking it through like, oh my goodness, like I am a person and this hurts. And they'd be like, no, you're tender-headed, but no. So yeah, those were like my earliest memories. So by 4th or 5th grade, I had a relaxer. Yeah, it was 6. But I got a relaxer and then I kept my hair relaxed up until, while I was in medical school. So that's like 2010 is where I decided to stop relaxing my hair. Honestly, it was because I just couldn't afford it. I was broke. I could not continue the upkeep. I couldn't relax it myself. And then I also started thinking about the time my husband and I were engaged. And I started thinking a lot about like one day being a parent. I'm just like, if I have a daughter, I want her to really embrace her hair. And I can't be like, well, I'm gonna relax my hair, but you're gonna enjoy your natural hair. So I'm like, well, let me start to like learn myself and learn my hair. That way, if I have a daughter, that I can, model positivity in that way. So so I've been natural since 2010. And it's been, even then has been rocky. The best thing has been that I've gotten to know myself in a way because just caring for my own hair and not having to deal with like those burns. Cause when I had a relaxer, no matter how much I like prepped my scalp, I would always have a burn. But yeah, it's been a journey. And now I'm in the phase where I'm just like, I'm not so much obsessed with like length retention and all that stuff. I was just telling you, before we started recording, was that my highlights are new. So I just got them about a month ago. I'm just like, I've been wanting to do it. My husband's like, just go do it. Like, worst thing that happens, it doesn't work out. You color your hair back, done. I'm like, or if it breaks off, like, it'll grow back. Yeah, I've always been trying to like, grow out my hair and this and that. And I'm just like, let me just have fun with the hair. That's where I'm at right now.
No, I think that's such a good place to be. But like you said, so you went natural in 2010 and it's like 2024. So like 14 years. And it's crazy because like, I feel like there's phases. Like I think about in grad school, there's like all these identity development theories. There should be like a natural hair identity development theory. Like, I don't know, listeners or me, maybe I'm saying it for myself, but for it to be worked on, because I think about, like there's different phases. One where you're just like coming to recognize like, I have hair and maybe there's a state that it's not in, that it could be like there's a natural state. Like when I wash it, like it curls, like it kinks and coils, right? Like starting to understand that for yourself and recognizing, maybe you are or are not as connected to your hair or don't really have that understanding. And then you go on the journey, right? To say like, let me just figure out what it's supposed to be. And in that journey, there's so much information, right? 2010, I talk about this a lot with my guests that like went natural. I went natural, I think like it was summer after my freshman year of college, like summer 2012. But like, that's the time YouTube University is booming.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing all the different things that everybody's trying to figure it out. And especially in the Black community, length has always been like pushed, like, oh, your hair is so pretty, your hair is so long, like your hair is so X, Y, and Z, that it almost makes it a stigma to not want that, which I talked about with one of my other guests, Nicole. Like, she had this super beautiful shortcut, but that was part of her identity exploration of just being like, I need to let go of like what everybody else is saying hair should be. Like, I need to understand, right, like how my hair curls, like how it is in its natural state, like what I need to do to keep it healthy. But in terms of looks and aesthetic, like I need just to be able to let it be fun and like really have pressure to like get to a certain end state. Which is funny. I was actually listening to your episode about letting go of perfection. And it's like, we think that there's an end state for things, and there's really no end state of our hair. Like, there's no end state, because we're growing and evolving. Our hair is growing and evolving
with us.
With us. Absolutely.
Yeah. You said it. Yeah. I think right now I'm just like in the phase of like, let me just try to have fun in every sense, that it also includes my hair. I was thinking to myself, so I just had a birthday a couple weeks ago. Not even a couple. It was literally last week. Thank you. It was last week. And it was a milestone birthday. So I just turned 40, and I was just like, the weeks leading up to my birthday, I was just like beating myself up and like really like picking myself apart, right? Like, well, I thought I would be here by now and have accomplished that and this and the other thing. Then I'm just like, well, whatever, we're here, and I have to be grateful for, you know, where I am in this moment. And then I was just thinking about like my kids, and I was like, you know, my kids have been like my greatest teachers so far, and their greatest lesson has been, how can we make this fun? Like, their life revolves around having fun, right? And at some point it annoys them. It's like, this ain't supposed to be fun. Like, you wash the dishes, wash the damn dishes, nothing. But at the same time, I get it. Like, how do we make the everyday, the mundane fun? And I'm trying to figure that out for myself. And right now I'm just like, my hair has been a source of like work. And I'm like, I don't want it to be work. How do I make this fun? So I'm just like, well, I wanted to color it. Let's go ahead and color it and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Yeah.
And I think that's so true for so many women. Like, I know so many of like my friends that I even talk to, they're like, oh, I went and permed my hair again. I couldn't do it. Or it's just like,
I've seen that.
I got locks just because like I, you know, like couldn't deal with it. But at the core of that, it's kind of what you said. It's like my hair was just so much work. It was so much to do. And I like go back and forth about that, because I'm like, there are people who are out there still, you know, like doing it. Like, what is that differentiation factor, right? But I think it's really, and I talk about this a lot, just like the mindset of it all, which is hard to like retrain your mind and thoughts on something. But like, for me, when I do my hair, it's like, I'm about to wash my hair and I'm about to watch these movies all day. Like, do not disturb. Like, I'll be snacking in between. And I just like carve that out for myself. But like, it's not that way for everybody. So
yeah. So like for you, it's like your self-care in a way. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do a face mask that day. Like, I'm going to wash my hair. Even if it's in the evening, like I'll just put on I love movies. So I'll put on a movie I've been wanting to watch, or one that's familiar. And I'll just sit there and I'll be like, we're going to twist. I'm going to watch this movie. And that's like my kind of like back to myself time. But, you know, for some folks, like fun is different for them. Our joy is different for them. But like finding a way to make it to that shift where it's like, this isn't actually a work of labor. Yeah. Because it's still attached to us. And I often think about like how much of the things that are related to ourselves do we frame in a sense of labor?
My goodness. Yes, that's a word. That is so true. Just all of, and for myself, like all of the things that are like actual self-care and caring for myself in a way that's going to show up in like 10, 15 years. Like, for example, like exercise and the things that I put into my body. Yes, in my mind, it's a chore that I need to like check off. Like, did I eat well today? Like, did I have whole foods, and did I cook? Did I meal prep for tomorrow or the day after? Did I exercise? And all these things are like, they're my jobs. They're not necessarily like, oh, I love doing this. And I think that's really powerful what you just said. Have that reframe.
And I also kind of like connecting those things back to hair too, right? Because hair is often a signifier of things that are happening in our bodies, right? And so, for example, like one of the reasons I was so excited to talk about this for the last couple of years, like I've just been having like weird like gut issues. My gut will just be like, I don't know what you're trying to feed me. And I'm like, it's the same thing we've been eating for the last 10 years.
Well, I don't like it no more.
Yeah. And so like I talk about this with my stylist often, where she's like, you know, sometimes like our stress can show up in our gut, and then our gut issues can show up in our scalp, and that can impact our hair and all of these different things. And I just never, because for so long, like my hair was just something else. So I'm now in this process and journey thinking about like my hair is actually connected to my body and something is wrong with my hair, it's probably signaling something else wrong in my body and vice versa. Like if something else is wrong in my, like if I'm misaligned somewhere else or stressed somewhere else, like how is it showing up in my hair? Because I've had times where it's like my gut's flaring up, my scalp was irritated, or like I'm stressed and now like maybe I see more shedding when I'm in the shower and things like that. So I'm curious from your perspective, like having the background in like medicine and biology, like how has that one influenced the way that you care for your hair specifically?
So you hit the nail right on the head. So absolutely, whenever there is something else going on, it could even be not necessarily like physical, but even emotional it's going to show up in our scalp, in our hair, right? So let's talk about stress really quickly. So stress is something that we all experience. Like we all have stressors to different degrees. So the stressors for some might be like, parenting or just like everyday things like your work or this life. Okay. Like every human has stressors. How we manage those stressors is going to impact our stress levels. So most Americans, unfortunately, are under chronic stress, right? So what that means, like we're just not dealing with the stressors appropriately, or there's just too many of them at once for one person to truly be able to manage, right? So what happens is as we have these chronic stressors, it impacts us like physically. So we have stress hormones essentially that our minds don't know whether or not a stressor is actually a bear or a tiger in our space or the bills are due. Like the mind does not know. The mind just knows that we are not safe and we need to get to safety. In order for us to get to safety, it's going to signal all of these stress hormones to be released. That's fine for the short term. So they're designed to get us to safety quickly, right?
Right.
But if we are constantly under this stress and these stress hormones are constantly being secreted, what happens is they deplete our minerals and our vitamins. So our bodies, of course, are going to take them from wherever they can. Our skin and our hair especially, is going to be one of the places that like our body is like, well, that's unnecessary. So let me go ahead and rob it from there just to maintain the rest of the body, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's super common that whenever we are going through just about anything, our hair is going to start to shed more, maybe even start to break off more. But because we are the way that we are, like in our culture, like we tend to push things aside, right? Like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, it's not because it's not like glaring. We'll just like, oh, shedding a little bit more this week or with this wash day, but it's okay. Until like something else that's even more aggressive then shows up. Now maybe like our skin is flaring up, or now we didn't have flakes before and now our scalps are really flaky. Like all of these things are because we are literally one. One of my gripes of Western medicine, and that made me want to like really explore wellness, is that Western medicine looks at us as like pieces and yet a whole. So if one part of us is suffering, eventually, if that's not taken care of, it's going to show up in other less expected places.
I'm just sitting here and I'm really processing what you said. One, because like just the actual like breakdown of how it works, but it sounds like hair was like the front line defense. It's like, such an easy place for the body to draw from. It sounds like it's like one of the first indicators of something else starting to go wrong. But for us, especially as people who aren't, even conditioned to really think about our hair, like for people who maybe aren't natural, like you're wearing braids all the time or you're like weeds or whatever, right? Like your hair is kind of put away. So like you almost can't even see some of these indicators until it's too late or just like really far down the line. And like now it's showing up in your skin, like in all these other different areas of your life. But like, that's just so interesting that the hair thing and even that the scalp things can either just be stressors to our environment or like the start of something else if we don't address it.
Yeah. And you said it too, like our hair and our skin, like specifically our skin is one of our first lines of defense. So the integumentary system is our skin, our hair, and our nails. They all work together to do what? Literally, they're like the protection from the environment, from our internal environment, right? So we're mammals, right? And so typically mammals have hair all over the body to help with insulation. We don't have hair like that, like not enough to keep us insulated. But the hair also is just part of that system that is meant to just be a defense. So think about all of our, like wherever we have potential contact with the outside world, as well as really important places, are covered with hair.
Yeah.
So our brain is underneath our scalps, right? So our hair is really important. And then as a side, like, textured hair is textured for a reason because typically our ancestors were closer to the equator and it was really important to keep the machinery, which is our brain, cool. So that's why our hair coils. It helps for sweat to evaporate. And then going back to like other places. So think about like the vaginal and anal canal, usually covered in hair, right? Because it's like a protective mechanism. So yes, our hair is absolutely protective. And I think now when we think about just modern men and women, our hair really should be just like, and our nails are really like a signifier as to like what's going on. I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to always look at my nails to see if to make sure that I was getting my vitamins, like that I was okay. And I was just like, girl, that is just like some Caribbean stuff. Like, that doesn't mean anything. But in medical school, I did learn that our nails really do have some indicators. Like there are different, like discoloration, the rate of the growth of the nail, all that is really, really important, especially not only to growing children, but just to us in general. And then as I'm speaking, I have fake nails on. So like, it just shows that sometimes we can become so disconnected from ourselves just because of like modern life.
No, that's so interesting, particularly with the nails, because like my nails, they'll grow long and I'll be like, yes, I'm gonna grow them long. And then I'm going to go like get them in a certain shape. And then they like, not now, I think now they're in like a spot where they're really strong. But like earlier this year, they were just like breaking. I was like, what is going on? But it was like, I did not grow up in DC, but I live there now. It's winter. So every time it gets cold, my body is just like, girl, what's going on? Please try to sap. Get it. And now I'm like, it's probably just reacting to the environment. And I probably also need to drink more water, but like, it's a signal that's like, hey, like something is like off kilter here. Like what's going on? And me, I'm just like, why are you against me? Why? Me?
But also, I will say this too, like, the same way that there are seasons and cycles, the same thing with our hair and with our skin and our nails as well. There's going to be some seasons where our hair is going to be more active in its growth. That way we'll see it as like maybe denser hair, fuller hair, longer hair, where it's easier for us to retain length. But there are also some times where our hair follicles are not as active, but it means nothing about our health. It just means that it's just a cycle that we're in. Sometimes it's just due to hormones. So for example, one of my favorite things, and the only thing that I enjoyed about being pregnant, is that my hair was luxurious. That thing was long, shiny, all of those things. I didn't have to do too much with it. And it had to do all with just my hormones. And my hormones were elevated, which was normal within, pregnancy time. Mm-hmm. And that same cycle can happen just without pregnancy, just living our lives. So sometimes, because it's winter time, it's completely normal that everything goes into more or less hibernation. So things slow down a bit. So the rate of the growth is going to be a little bit less, and it's okay. Like, doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong per se.
Is summer one of the seasons? Is our hair growing more? Is it thriving more in summer?
So I think yes, that's typically the trend. I think what happens with the summer months is that if we live in North America, right, the summer months are when we get more sunlight, so more vitamin D. B, most of the fruits and vegetables are going to be in season. So we're just eating a little bit better just by default. So if we have those excess vitamins and nutrients, where's our body going to put it? Well, everything else, the vital organs have it. Well, let's go ahead and give it to the hair. So now we're going to see it translate more in the hair. And also the humidity also helps with us retaining the moisture. That way it won't break as it would in the wintertime.
Yeah. So it's like kind of the season, but also more than the season, because it's like, what are our habits in these seasons?
Yeah.
How does that show up?
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
That's interesting. Because in the summertime, I'm out for my evening walks every night. I'm like, we're going for a walk. We're going for a stroll. I live by the river. So I'm like, yes, let's do all the things. And then in the winter, I'm inside. Like,
yep. Inside. And you said you're in DC, so you probably have like the artificial heat that's drying and all of that stuff, and it's darker earlier. So yeah, all those things play a role. And possibly, I don't know about you, but maybe for me, for sure, like the way that I handle my stressors are a little bit different in the wintertime. I'm trying to work on that. But also there are more stressors. So think about the end of the year for me is a busy time. It's a hard time with work as well as like with family, like with the holidays and the logistics and this and that. So it's just a little bit more loaded for us, and it might translate in our hair. For me, I put that thing away. In a couple of weeks, I'm putting my braids on.
freaking my brace. I was just thinking about that. I was like, yeah, I'm probably just pulling it back. Like I've gotten into the habit. Like right now I have this, I love, I call it my like little wedding bob. I get it. I know they only to like wedding, but usually it's like just pull back and I like wear it in a low ponytail and like band it a bit. And I'm just like, yeah, this is it. We're ponytailing it and this is good, you know, especially when there's a lot of things happening and going on. So get through the busy season.
Yep. I think that's common. A lot of us do that. Sometimes the wintertime, a lot of us like start to wear wigs and things like that just because, you know, I got other things going on. Let me just put this away for a second.
Alex.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's so fascinating, really just hearing more and more about like how our bodies are connected and like the skin, the hair and the nails and like how those things can show up in our scalp too. Kind of like, because I know like when I've talked with my scalp, like my stylist, we've also talked about how the gut is connected to all of that too. Like how does that work? Like for lack of better.
Yeah, no problem. So our gut is super important because for two reasons. So everything that we eat is absorbed. The nutrients are going to be absorbed throughout our gut, right? So if there's anything that's causing inflammation, that's like a barrier to us absorbing those nutrients, it doesn't matter how much or how well, quote, we eat. Like if this is something going on with our guts, like it's not going to be able to really extract those nutrients from the food. That's number one. And then deliver it to the rest of the body. And then the other thing is when we talk about gut health, it's important to have certain bacteria in our gut in order to help make co-vitamins to help us like really optimize like all of the chemical reactions that happen within our bodies. So there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. We have both. We want so that we have more good bacteria, so more of the healthy gut flora than the stuff that causes like, you know, all types of side effects like the constipation or the diarrhea, flatulence, things of that nature. So whenever things are healthy and we have more of the healthier gut flora, that just helps everything else. Like we're able to absorb our nutrients better. There is less inflammation within our guts able to do so. And then also, again, they also produce as a byproduct of their metabolism, just cofactors and coenzymes to help us just be optimal. So whenever that is all good, it's going to reflect everywhere else. The skin. So, and whenever we talk about skin and the scalp, like it's one, you know, like if we shave our head, like just put the lotion on, like, yeah, too, like it's literally one.
Going all the way back.
All the way back. Yes. Yeah. So it is all one. So a lot of times that we can see like certain diseases are going to show up in our skin, or they might just be primary to the skin, right? So when we think about that, just what comes out of the skin of the scalp is the hair. So if that is inflamed or if that is going through whatever, of course, it's going to show up in the hair as well.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. It sounds like, right, like our gut system is like what pushes out either something good, like our good vitamins and things, or like if something's off in there and maybe it's holding on to things longer, like it's starting to push out toxins that then show up in the other places in our body, which goes to our first line defense that we've learned. So like our scalp, our hair, nails.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. I don't know. I just want us all to, and it's because of how we've been like taught, but I just want us to remember that we literally are just one vessel that all these things are happening in. So if like our mental health is not great, or if our emotional health, if we don't have a support system, or if there's actual like a disease process that's happening in one organ system, eventually it's going to trickle and affect the entire organ system, which is the entire organism. Right?
So like we are literally one. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I am literally one thing. I'm like, that's the mental dialogue I'm having with myself. And I was like, Shannon, you are literally one thing.
Yes, experiencing all these things and processing all these things. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm curious because I'm thinking about like when I first moved up to DC, I moved the end of September, beginning of October 2019. And I had like 1 week where it was still kind of summery, and then October hit and it was like raining and it was great and it was cold, and I like went into shock. And I remember like my scalp, like I would go into work and it just started flaring up out of nowhere, and I was embarrassed. I was like, there's snowflakes falling from my head. Like I had never experienced that before because I'm from Georgia, you know, like I lived in the South majority of my life and it's always humid. Like I've never had that issue before. And I didn't even know what to do with that. I just like kept shampooing it, or I was shampooing more. But now I'm looking back and it's like my body was reacting to that move.
Yes.
And so if I had understood how stress and stressors can impact my hair and scalp, then I probably would have recognized it as that instead of thinking like, yeah, something else was like wrong,
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, are there any, like, when it comes to like stressors and the symptoms that show up in our body, are there any specific like like signs that we can be looking for to say like, hey, like something else might be wrong somewhere else, or maybe I need to go to a doctor, or maybe I really need to start exploring more intentional practices that could show up in our scalp, in our hair, and even our skin and nails too. While we're here, we're here, one whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we are one. I would say if you start losing hair more rapidly than you normally were, so you know how much you typically shed, like whenever you comb your hair or brush your hair, you know how much hair is going to be out in the comb or in your hands afterwards. If there's like an increase in that, or if you can see like visible thinning in certain areas, or just frank patches just falling out, that is like an alarm that something's not quite right. I would then like take a look at the scalp to see what's going on with the scalp, like all over. You know what I started doing? I started doing like taking pictures in certain areas
Yeah.
and then like comparing to see like what's going on from like month to month, or have like a loved one take a look at your scalp too to see maybe there's like a sore or something like a patch that's like thinner than the rest that you can't get to. So do like a good inspection. And then also with the nails too. So I would also take a look at how is the nail health. So if my hair is starting to thin, are my nails like starting to get brittle as well? And I would look at that. If I'm saying yes to both of these things, and this is like not like a actual patch or like a huge chunk of hair coming out, but just like some like more shedding than usual,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna like do like an inspection, like how have been eating lately? Have I been making all my meals? Like how have I been drinking, a good amount of water? Am I hydrated? How am I sleeping? Am I sleeping well? And then how am I feeling emotionally? Like what's going on in my life? Is there like a new change? Is it a new season, like a season in my life? Like a move is a huge thing. We don't give ourselves credit for like really big things that are happening in our lives. A move is one of them, So like a move is going to, maybe we might push it aside in our minds, like, oh, it's a move, I had to do it, or I wanted to do it. But like even still, it's big. So think about what's happening there. If everything seems to be okay in terms of like the mental and the emotional piece, then I would do a multivitamin. I am an advocate for multivitamins because the industrialization of the farming practices, the vegetables that we're eating is not what our parents or our grandparents ate. Like they look the same, but they're not as nutrient dense. So I would add a multivitamin. And then I would also connect my menstrual cycle. How is my menstrual cycle? Has there been any change there? And if there has, definitely let's go see our primary care physician to take a look at what can possibly be going on in terms of our hormone levels and things of that nature. That's where I would start.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, just because, again, it's like recognizing that things don't just happen in our body just to happen. Like it's our bodies trying to tell us something and trying to communicate with us. And so really being aware and equipped of like I'm shedding, it's not just to shed,
Right.
there's a reason for this. Or if like my scalp is flaring up, like I actually have my friend Linda, she came to my house and I was like, yeah, my scalp has just been so irritated lately. But I used to have eczema and I was having eczema flare-ups, and it's honestly been since I've been in DC area. And I was like, I think I'm now recognizing that this is my body being in this area. And she was taking pictures of my scalp for me to like just help identify issues. But like honestly realizing that we just can't push some things under the rug. I think for Black people, especially Black women, people of color in general, right? But like we power through so much.
Yep.
And then we look up and we wonder why we're not well.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
When we never made space to really be well.
Yep.
In the first place. That was not an intentional play on words, but that works so well.
It's so well.
Because, but like, I'm like on the recovering end of just like series of stress. And so I look back and I'm looking forward. I'm looking back and looking forward, trying to figure out how can I like retain the wellness practices that I've established for myself, but also like, how could I have recognized other things sooner? And so I think it's just so important to acknowledge that like their signs are there all along. Like we just need to know what they are and, or even just recognize them as being off what our base level norm is. So your point, just being more conscious of ourselves, being more conscious of our hair and our scalp, to say like, if your scalp has always been dry your whole life, like you might just have a dry scalp, right? But it changed when you went to an environment, or if like your hair starts to shed more, like if you start to see these differences that are off your center, that are off your mark, like recognizing those and acknowledging them, and at least taking the initiative to explore, especially in our American culture and society where, like you said, like so many of my friends are stressed. Like so many of us are dealing with stress every day, whether it's from work or whether it's from like other factors, and our body doesn't know the difference.
Right.
So it's up to us and our conscious minds to kind of parse that out for our body.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard, like I won't discount the fact that like when somebody's really going through it, the last thing on your mind, unfortunately, is things like your hair or, one of the first things that typically goes whenever we're going through a really hard time is our self-care practices. But to your point, whenever we're on the other side of that, it's really important to maintain those practices as much as we can so that, let's just say, whatever we used to do 5 days a week, now if it diminishes down to 3 or 2 days a week, we still are retaining some of that we have that foundation that we can come back to. But it really is difficult. When life is life and it's hard.
Everything is so much easier said than done. I'm like recovering bed rotter.
Okay, same.
But I'll be like, bed day 1, day 2. I gotta move. I gotta get out of here. And I can laugh. But, like sometimes it does show up, but it's like, oh, you have to push yourself a little bit harder sometimes, like do the things that are good for you. I saw this quote somewhere and it's like, sometimes this discipline is the driver, right? Like it's not my feelings or it's not my wanting to.
Yeah.
It's not even being motivated because like some days you're not motivated, but it's just the discipline of the practice. And so even getting to a spot of like having a discipline of practice, like takes steps and it takes increments. And so I think it's important, like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with like your first steps.
That truly.
The Lion King, but they said good.
Truly.
So,
yeah, truly. Yeah. And I think when it comes to our hair, I think because our relationship with hair, like traditionally as Black women, has been so like tumultuous sometimes, I really love that you make yours like yourself, like part of your self-care, like practice for the week. And I think that's something that we could all take away from it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole day, but like really like make taking care of yourself and your hair just like part of how you love on yourself. Because for me, mine is skin. Like I enjoy just like putting all the serums and the oils on my skin, but I want to use that approach with my hair, like spend some time with like doing all the things to my hair, conditioning, combing, massaging the scalp, all those things. Because there's something to learn in that of itself. I think what I've learned in 40 years of life, my goodness, I'm 40, but what I've been learning is that like it's important to constantly be falling in love with yourself and taking care of yourself and falling in love with the process of taking care of yourself too in the different ways.
Yeah. Something that I think I'm actually becoming more aggressive about is that, and I think it's specifically because I look back and I see moments where it's just like, dang, like I wish I had better advocated for myself in certain things or in certain places, in certain relationships, like in certain work environments. Like, or I just look back and I see where I was trying to make myself smaller or like to fit into something that I really wasn't. And I didn't even recognize as that at that time. And so now I just am much more like, okay, like what is me? This is me. Like, how do I carve out space for that? Like, or how do I just preserve those bits of myself? And so like actively working and trying to be more aggressive in that space. And hair is one of the ways that has shown up for me. Like growing up, I never did my own hair. So it was like one of the first things that I was, I guess, really able to take agency of for myself. Like, like when I went off to college and I was like, well, we got to figure this out. And so really building on that and just like carving out more space to make agency for myself in other ways.
Sorry, my laptop's going to die with me.
No worries. Get it all plugged up. See, our laptops need a charge. Like we need food.
Yes. Like we need the good food. Yeah.
Well, wind us on down. I've really been enjoying this conversation. This is just so good because I think it's so important. Like no matter how hard it is, to like carve out the spaces and carve out the room and carve out the wellness. Sometimes I think we say yes to too much. Like we got to say no to some things to say yes to ourselves. And I'm also like, people tell me I have like very strong boundaries, which is like, really, it's great for me. I'm like, I don't know if they're always saying it as a good or bad thing.
That's on them.
People say it to me when I've had somebody say it to me and it definitely had the tone of like, I wasn't doing what they needed me to do. And I'm like, well, it wasn't a priority in alignment with all my other things. And so I'm sorry, I gave you what I could, but like and that was like in a work scenario, but I think about that in life too. Like we have to kind of like be okay with knowing where our limit of yes is, or our limit of no is, to even just have like some room for ourselves. And sometimes I think like, what is going to be the difference maker? Me taking this bit of time to do my hair, feel better about my life, like all these deadlines, what is really a necessity? Like what is really necessary for me to like show up in this space, show up in this world, show up in work, show up in these things? Is there room for a boundary? Is there room for pushback? Is there room for an extended deadline? Is there room for X, Y, and Z? And like making those asks and like making those concessions and navigating that throughout life to just make more room.
I love that. I love that. There was this quote that it was a video. It was like a TikTok from like years ago, maybe like 2020. It was like pandemic time. And it was this older man. And he said something about you are made up of cells. You are made up of billions of cells who are working to keep you alive. Take care of yourself, and everything that you say to yourself, those cells can hear. And don't make their work in vain, essentially, right? So going back to you and the boundaries, I think the boundaries are so important. I wish I had stronger boundaries. I don't think anybody yet has told me that my boundaries are too strong. And that is an alarm for me, like girl, you need to tighten up. No, I'm so serious, That means I'm saying yes too much to outside and not enough to me, like we're with each other. Like that's it. Wait, this is our home for our entire lives. And we need to be better at treating our homes well. The same way we treat our external home, like we have to treat our internal home, like just as well. So yeah, I really love this conversation because it's given me a lot to really think about. And yeah, some things that as a kid, I grew up in a really essentially fundamentalist Christian home, and like taking care of like your external was like vanity and vain and in a bad way. But no, it's not. It's not at all.
And even to that point too, it's like God knows every like hair on our head, right? Like he's designed us so perfectly and intentionally. So I almost think it's like it's on me to like take care of the body that's me, and also to do the things that he's called me to do. And it was like a message I was listening to. I think it might have been like earlier this year, like what Transformation Church, I think. But he was pretty much saying like we all have assignments and we all have like calls, we all have things we need to do, and like God has designed us for those things, and that includes our body, right? Like if we're gonna be parents, like, and you want to play with your kids, you have to be with your kids, right? Or like if there's just certain things that you want to do, like think about like Coco Gauff to play tennis, like she has to be well, like that's her thing, like she has to, like have herself in physical shape, but I'm sure in mental shape too, and so like how we take care of ourselves allows us to show up in the other things that we want to do, and honestly to show up in the places that God has called us to do too. And so I think just even like a reform of that narrative. So there are so many things that get twisted in so many different ways, but like
for sure,
God has given us like this as a vessel, right? And so like, how do we take care of that? Like, how do we, recognize the signs? And he also created us with these signals. Like if our nurse spoke, now like the body's designed intimately in those ways.
Yeah.
And so joy of reframing that.
For sure. And to show up like fully in like the most soundest of mind and the most beautiful of spirit and in physical, right? Like we're a visual creature. That's how my son does a lot. My oldest one, like he don't care how he look, and it drives me insane. I'm just like, no, this matters. Like, you're not a baby anymore. You're a big boy now. You're about to be 10. I'm just like, how we present ourselves, it matters, like it's not end all be all, but like unfortunately people judge, right? And they're judging me. And
so by how you look, son.
You understand? Like, unfortunately, like, we're visual creatures. So you want to put your best into yourself. Like part of hygiene is like, how do I present myself? And I think when it comes to like physical hygiene, spiritual hygiene, all of those things come together for that way we can be our best selves, to your point, to like reach and rise our calling, whatever that calling is. Like we're prepared in all the ways.
Even to just learn to recognize it, right? So like clear yourself to have room to like recognize like this is a passion, or this is a place where you're aligned, and to go for it. Like all of those things, they matter.
Yeah.
Sure. So you could share from like our conversation, like one kind of like overarching or key piece of advice with listeners about balancing wellness and their bodies and their hair journeys. What would it be?
Goodness. I would say you matter in all the ways. just you matter in all the ways. Like your hair matters, your skin matters, how you're feeling today matters, like your mind, your heart, like it all matters. Your goals, your desires, your disappointments, they all matter. I think especially as Black women have been socialized to feel like, well, we don't really matter. What matters is what we can contribute to the people around us. Yes.
Work, what we get.
Right. And your work is great, but baby, you matter. Like you are a greater, like you're the greatest, you know? And once we really embody the fact that we do matter in every single thing, like every desire, like matters, everything about us is significant, and we act like it, everything else will eventually work itself out. Not to say it's going to be easy, but it will work itself out.
That's so good. I literally was just like, it's funny because that wasn't like the answer I expected. I'm like, I feel like people needed to hear that. I need to hear it, you know, like definitely like an overachiever, definitely someone who feels like I need to produce. And if I'm not like doing things, like what's going on? And so like just knowing that being it enough, like is really
That's it.
cool. Yeah.
I mean, like you are powerful. Like your presence here is powerful and necessary. Just you being, just you showing up. That's it.
Yeah. So then in that same vein, our final question, my favorite question, if you could say an affirmation to your hair right now, what would you say?
I would say don't break. I done bleached you. I done put some heat to you, which I don't normally do. Just don't break. And I think that's also for my spirit. Like it's a lot going on right now, and just don't break. So don't break. You could bend, you know, it could be a little bit more malleable. That's okay. Just don't break.
Like a palm tree.
Yeah.
Trees are made to endure storms. They like bend, but they don't break. And they're near sources of water. They stand.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, Cassandre, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for those who are listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and gleaned so much amazing information. I know I have a lot to reflect on. And so I just hope y'all enjoyed it. And until next time, remember that all hair is good hair and your hair is good hair. So thanks for being a part of our community.